Hello, welcome to Bible study. We're looking at Jeremiah chapters 40 to 44. Jerusalem has been captured. Most of the people have either been killed or taken prisoner. What happened next? Well, the Babylonian captain of the guard, Nebuzaradan, found Jeremiah chained up with the people being taken into exile, and he released him. He gave Jeremiah the freedom to go where he wanted to, and gave him a food parcel for the journey. Nebuzaradan clearly knew about Jeremiah's prophecies. The Babylonian intelligence service was working well. Jeremiah chose to stay in Jerusalem with the people who were left. The king of Babylon appointed a governor for the land of Judah, for the poorest of the poor who hadn't been taken into exile. The governor was Gedaliah, son of Ahikam, son of Shaphan, who back in the day had helped King Josiah carry out reforms in line with God's laws. Gedaliah was a man of good character. He stood in that difficult place between the Babylonians and the people. He was their advocate. He was a friend to Jeremiah and followed his advice. And so the people were able to farm the land peacefully and produce a good harvest. It was looking good. Actually, for the poor, it was better now than when their own kings were ruling and exploiting them. And then, tragedy. Sadly, Gedaliah was murdered by a traitorous military leader, who then carried out a massacre and carried off prisoners. However, the other military leaders defeated Gedaliah's attackers and rescued the prisoners. But now they were terrified about what the king of Babylon would do in retaliation for the murder of the governor he had appointed. So the army officials, the army officers, and the people they had rescued set out for Egypt to find safety. They asked Jeremiah to pray for them, and they promised to obey God's directions. Jeremiah prayed for them, and when he knew what God had to say, he told them to stay in Judah. There God would look after them and protect them. But if they were to go to Egypt, then what happened would be what they feared. The people had not been completely honest with Jeremiah. They were not willing to obey God unless it fitted in with their own ideas. They didn't want to live by faith. Their fear was driving them. Although they said they were willing to follow God, they did not mean it when it came to the crunch. Unlike Jesus, when he faced his death, he prayed, "Father, please take this cup of suffering away from me, yet I want your will to be done, not mine." So off they went to Egypt, forcing Jeremiah and his secretary Baruch to go with them. In Egypt, Jeremiah continued his lonely job of sharing God's words with them, warning them of disaster and appealing to them to return their hearts to God. There was no happy ending for Jeremiah. He probably died in Egypt. These chapters show us the ups and downs of history, the hopes and disappointment, triumph and tragedy, wise government and its collapse. Just when there was hope for better times, for peace and for enough food to eat, hopes were shattered. chaos and confusion. Why? Why did God allow it? But history often looks like this. We only have to think of Afghanistan in the last few weeks. All those shattered hopes, broken lives, fear and violence. My dad fought in the Second World War. He was a gunner in a tank. He said that in a battle there was always confusion. It was hard to see what was happening. This world is a battleground between good and evil. Often it's hard to make sense of what's happening. It is sometimes hard to see where God is. That's why we have His Word, so that we know He still reigns, He's still God, and He still loves us. The book of Revelation takes us into the control room of heaven, so that we can see that however confusing and however tragic life is, we know God is still working everything out for good for those who love Him. So we too can join in the song that says, "This one truth will be my story. You still reign and you're still God." Thank you for listening. Bye.